podcast is brought to you by AlleyRepair.com. Don't leave your skee-ball machines lying around collecting dust in the basement. Let AlleyRepair.com bring those machines back to life. High-quality workmanship for your skee-ball playing needs. Contact AlleyRepair.com today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Pro Life Wrestling Podcast. This episode, we discuss the latest set of Impact Wrestling tapings, what we may be able to expect from Jeff Jarrett's involvement, and what Anthem needs to do to start to separate Impact Wrestling from the rest of the independent promotions out there. We discuss some of the rumors surrounding Kenny Omega and what could be in the works for the cleaner. And finally, we discuss the current WWE news and tidbits. Let's get started with TNA and the Anthem purchase and rebranding into Impact Wrestling. One of the big stories last week was the potential meeting between Jeff Jarrett and the ownership of Anthem, trying to figure out what role Jeff could play in the new company. And let's face it, Jeff Jarrett is the guy who innovated this whole thing. He's the guy who came out, for those who don't know the history of TNA wrestling, he's the one who came out with the idea of having a weekly, usually on a Wednesday night pay-per-view, $10 a week, and bringing a wrestling promotion to the States outside of World Wrestling Entertainment. WWE is obviously the biggest, the baddest, the best. They always have been, always will be. The reality, though, is wrestling is always better when there's competition. Well, we got some clarity the other day about what's going on with Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett, as well as Dutch Mantell, have now come into TNA, and they're going to serve as consultants for Impact Wrestling. You know, with the vast amount of knowledge that both Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantell have, going back all the way to territorial days. Dutch Mantell's been around forever. I know he got caught up a little bit there with that whole Zeb Coulter thing in WWE. People often forget this is a guy who's extraordinarily creative, worked with Jerry Lawler for so many years, putting together, for a low-budget operation, and really a quality product in Memphis. Whether you're talking about Continental or when it eventually became USWA or whatever period of time you're talking about in Memphis. Memphis Wrestling, despite its low-budget appearance on television, was actually a pretty well thought out program. It's a place where a lot of young stars got their start. The Rock started there, Flex Cavana, and people like that. So bringing these kinds of talents in to work in the creative side of things and get the juices flowing again for Impact Wrestling, very much a well-needed thing. Impact Wrestling has not been the same since pretty much when Jeff Jarrett left. He was the driving force behind the product the whole time he was in control. As soon as it was purchased by Dixie Carter and Alaru and threw the whole thing out of whack, we've been waiting ever since for them to get their feet going again. I know they had that short period where they brought in Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan and thought that would restart the promotion, but they got away from what made Impact Wrestling so special. The X Division was a huge part of it. I'm very happy to see that DJZ has held the title, the X Division title, for as long as he has, giving some legitimacy to a title that has historically been either the top of the food chain, back when you had people like Samoa Joe and AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels feuding for the title, or it's been like an afterthought, a forgotten piece of jewelry laying around in the back. DJZ at least is a consistent champion over the last several months, and he's making the title mean something. What it means, I really don't know, because I can't envision a scenario where DJZ cashes in his X Division championship for a world title match against someone like, say, a Bobby Lashley or, Eddie Edwards or somebody of that nature, who's going to give any kind of match that you could be convinced that DJZ would be able to be put over. So that's just not going to happen. But at least he's brought some consistency to the booking. We see the same guy come out, defend that title, and walk away with the belt every day in and day out every week. Back to the Jeff Jarrett thing, though. With Jeff Jarrett, you're looking at a guy who's just, maybe as a performer, he was kind of overrated by people like Vince Russo and the big wigs at WCW right before their collapse. But as far as booking-wise, always been relatively solid. I mean, even as the performer side of things, you really got to think about it. When Hulk Hogan was doing his little thing there when they had Bash at the Beach, and Hogan goes away for a while, Jeff Jarrett's the chosen one and transitions the title to Booker T back in WCW days. Those things were exciting, and Jeff Jarrett was right in the middle of those storylines. It's real easy for us to look backwards, hindsight 2020, and say Jeff Jarrett never drew a dime. I remember seeing some documentary with Mike Graham saying Jeff Jarrett thought he was the man, never drew a dime. You know what he did? He did the best he could in WCW when they were having all kinds of free fall because they couldn't bring in an audience. So I'm not going to hold that against Jeff Jarrett. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at his history. And historically speaking, Jeff Jarrett has been an innovative mind the world of professional wrestling. Anything he can bring to Anthem to make Impact Wrestling a solid competitor. I don't expect them to compete with World Wrestling Entertainment, but I expect them to be a competitive independent promotion. Ring of Honor right now probably duking it out with TNA for the number 2 slot. Lucha Underground's really not that far behind as far as quality of product. Maybe not with the audience, but then again, when you think about it, when you're on the El Rey network, you're not going to have the same audience as WWE or Ring of Honor or any of those. The Access Television is a great outlet for New Japan, but let's face it, New Japan's got one of the best products in the world, but it's never going to compete on the major scale with WWE unless they get more exposure. But when you compare all those small promotions, TNA has an opportunity to really rise up and grab the brass ring, as Vince always likes to say, and become the secondary promotion. So I'm hoping that good things come in the future for TNA. It's curious that GFW hasn't been brought up at all in the discussions, at least the ones that have been released to the public about what's going on with Jeff Jarrett and TNA. It would be very nice to see something come out of GFW after all the excitement when Jeff Jarrett was initially going to launch the company. But at the same time, it's been a couple years, and short of selling some gold and putting on a shoddy match here and there with some local 2-bit promotion, GFW hasn't done a whole lot. Now, I don't fault Jeff Jarrett's creativity for that. I fault the fact that there's just not enough money for him to pay top-tier talent to come in and be a part of that promotion, despite the fact that if you go to GFW Wrestling's webpage, you see a talent roster that includes half the WWE roster right now. People like Gallows and Anderson and all that still listed on their roster page. So GFW either needs to go away or make a move. Jeff Jarrett needs to really help TNA, but also help his own brand. But that's a conversation for a whole nother day. Let's move on. Let's talk about the one-night-only tapings and the TNA tapings that took place this past week. I'll tell you one thing, that my immediate gut reaction from all the results from those shows, too much Moose. I like Moose. I think Moose is a great talent. I think he's somebody they can build around, but I feel like he's being crammed down my throat. You bring in Mike Bennett and Maria, and they're supposed to be the thing, and then all of a sudden Moose comes in, and it's almost like you buried Mike Bennett with Moose. Moose is the grand champion or whatever. He's gonna, courtesy of those, here's spoiler alert, courtesy of those TV tapings, he's gonna lose that title to Drew Galloway. But either way, a lot of exciting things going down at the TNA Impact tapings. We got to see a whole new gimmick rollout for Aaron Rex and Rockstar Spud. I'll be honest with you, I actually like him better as a babyface, not as much as a heel, but it sounds like they're going to go the heel route and make him into a stuck-up, aristocratic style of character, and it looks like he's going to have Rockstar Spud repackaged as well, being his right-hand man and his sidekick. Yeah, I can deal with a gimmick like that. I think Rockstar Spud is maybe a talented aerial artist or whatever you want to call him for the size of him, but at the end of the day, I couldn't care less to see Rockstar Spud wrestle most of the time. But that gives him a role, and my concern is Aaron Rex's character really should be in the main event picture. It's a huge issue that World Wrestling Entertainment never pushed him the way he could have. When he won Money in the Bank in WWE, he could have popped as a main event star. The fans wanted it. The people really got behind him, and they dropped the ball with it. Now I fear that with this transition into a heel, that he's going to get stuck in like a heel mid-card status again for at least some period of time. And let's face it, when he walked out the first time on Impact Wrestling, people popped. They were excited to see him. They were curious to see what Impact Wrestling could do with him that WWE couldn't. And I think we're still going to be stuck waiting to see that because they haven't done anything with him. He's just being wasted. They gave him that grand championship. I can't beat that horse enough. I mean, the grand title, what a waste of TV time. But whatever. We'll move on from there. Anthem, gotta get in touch with the fans. If I was them, I'd be doing some market surveys right now. Find out what my fans actually want to see. Because I'll tell you, this poorly lit, horrible display that they had for the last few months, I'm glad they're revamping that. The new logo's out looks different, has a totally different feel than the former Impact Wrestling logo, but they need to do more to the overall production value. We need some pyro, we need better music, we need better entrances, we need the place to be lit. When it used to be the old presentation at TNA Wrestling, it was very unique, it looked interesting, and it was different. It wasn't WWE-like. And this, to be perfectly honest with you, it looks like ECW product to me. I said that last week. It's really not the most aesthetically pleasing visual production. So I'm hoping that Anthem really understands that and tries to beef up things for their audience. Ask their audience, what do you want to see? By all means, anybody who happens to catch this podcast on YouTube, give me some suggestions. I'll be more than happy to shoot all kinds of feedback on TNA's webpage. Hey, listen, guys, this is what you need to do, because they need to hear it. We're the people who buy their product. We're the ones who purchase their merchandise and go to their shows. They need to hear what we have to say, and I just hope they take some of that into consideration. On the topic of Moose, I want to go back to Moose for a second. The one-night-only pay-per-view tapings that went down this week, Moose ends up winning the Joker's Wild one-night-only pay-per-view, getting a $100,000 check from Anthem. Somebody made a joke on one of the websites talking about how Anthem's name was big, focused front and center on the check for the Joker's Wild $100,000. I guess that's their way of slipping in some advertising, but again, more Moose being shoved down your throat. At least in this regard, it's not a championship, it's not extra TV time, it's a pay-per-view, and the tournament itself, the results look pretty solid. I'll be interested to see what that looks like when they produce it. But those things are not what I'm actually most concerned about with TNA right now. What I'm concerned with is when you bring in stars that you've had from yesterday, and you try to make them new all over again, and you redo the matches that people have been seeing for dozens of years now, that's what hurts your product. We saw the return this week of Angelina Love during one of their TV tapings, and I mean, it's a good time for her to come in. I don't know if anybody heard, but Gail Kim is out. She had back surgery, which is always serious. I don't care what kind of operation you're performing on your back. Back surgery is a serious thing. But with Gail Kim out, I guess they felt like they needed another main event female star. The problem is, when you bring in Angelina Love, yes, she's a star. She's got TNA background. The people know her. They're comfortable with her. It's a great face. They didn't even play her Beautiful People music when she came out for the tapings, which that's a problem. But if you're going to bring her back, the first match you should not be putting her into is with Madison Rayne. The match has been done to death. We've seen Madison Rayne and Angelina Love about 40,000 times. We're tired of seeing that. Put her in there with something new. Give her a new challenge, a new opponent. Do whatever you got to do, but you got to freshen up the Knockouts division. It's the same people wrestling the same people every single week. It has been for a year now. And just bringing Angelina Love back, that's not bringing somebody new. She was less than a year ago. She was there. Maybe just over a year, when she was just before she gave birth to her kid. Davey Richards. You seriously need to find either new talent for her to wrestle or don't bring her back. Because right now you're wasting her. Alright, I'm going to get off TNA. I want to move into the World Wrestling Entertainment conversation, because they got a few things out there that are of interest to me. None more so than Ric Flair. Ric Flair going on Twitter, and he's been posting all these workout videos. I don't know if anybody saw the one where he deadlifted 400 pounds, which I don't care who you are. I'm a younger guy by a long shot than Ric Flair, and I can't deadlift 400 pounds. And to see him busting his tail and working hard is a beautiful thing. He put up a tweet, something to the effect of, I'm never going to retire, number 17. And right away, everybody jumps on a speculation if you're talking about him entering the Royal Rumble at number 17. I will tell you, I pray to God he does. He's one of those wrestlers who, I don't care if you have to pull his skeleton out and dust it off and throw it in the ring, I'll watch, because Ric Flair is immortal to me. He's just like Hulk Hogan. He's like, God rest his soul, Randy Savage, or any of the old-time mega stars, the people that used to headline WrestleManias and Starrcades. Those are the people we always want to see. If you dust off Bret Hart one more time, whatever. I don't have a problem with a couple old-timers like that taking up some spots in the Rumble. Speaking of, I'm very frustrated that it sounds like we're not going to get to see Shawn Michaels anywhere in the Royal Rumble. It's a big announcement that on January 9th he'll be at Raw. That sounds great, except he's going to promote a movie. And perfectly honest with you, WWE movie studio productions have not historically been that fabulous. They really haven't. You could say what you will about promoting their product, but right around Royal Rumble time, when you're going to have it in San Antonio, Texas, you better have if you're having Shawn Michaels on, you better have him on there for a big reason. That's not to say that we're not still going to get one of those, but I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, and I don't want anybody to put too much stock in, Shawn Michaels is going to come back and call out AJ Styles and lead to a program at WrestleMania. Yeah, we would all love to see that. Probably not going to happen, but whatever. It gives fodder for the rumor mills. It keeps people talking. But what I will tell you, what I love talking about is something that is so long overdue for any true wrestling fan. The people who, like me, who grew up in the 80s and 90s watching some of the greatest wrestling in the history of the business. One of my all-time favorite wrestlers, Ravishing Rick Rude. I just gotta love the arrogance of a guy walking out, pivoting and gyrating his hips, calling out to a lady every week, bringing her out of the crowd, making out with her in front of the world, and just not giving a crap about anybody. And I remember being a child, I hated him when he was a bad guy. And then as I got older, I realized what his character really was, and I just loved it. And I've always thought that Rick Rude deserved to be immortalized in the WWE Hall of Fame. And now, after the announcement of Diamond Dallas Page as the first entrant into the Hall of Fame earlier this week, it's now been confirmed that Ravishing Rick Rude will finally make his enshrinement into the Hall as well. And that is something I cannot even begin to describe how happy I am to see that. But what we need to do is start getting some more people in that deserve to be in there. There's a lot of people that are missing. That Hall of Fame is a joke if certain people aren't in there. And WWE really needs to go through and think about it. When you're in, look, don't get me wrong, I'm not taking anything away from the Godfather, but if he's a Hall of Famer and Rick Rude is just now going in, that's a problem. The Rock and Roll Express should be in the Hall of Fame. Nikita Ivan Koloff should be in the Hall of Fame. Those kinds of people should be in the Hall of Fame long before the Godfather. Okay? The WWE needs to look at who's missing from their list. And again, anybody who's listening to this podcast and wants to leave a comment, either through Spreaker or whichever service you're streaming this through, or if it's on YouTube, by all means, drop me some comments. People you think should be in the Hall of Fame. There's too many that are not in there, and that's a problem. We're the fans. It's a beautiful thing. Every year when you go to see that Hall of Fame ceremony, you see the guys walk out, you go up to the pedestal, when they hit their music or whatever, they introduce the new inductee and they walk out, just seeing the ovation from the people and the appreciation that we fans have for these people who have just done so much to bring entertainment to us for so many years. On a personal level, I literally, I can be man enough to say I teared up a bit when I watched the Four Horsemen go in, because it bothered me that Tully Blanchard wasn't in there all by himself, and Arn Anderson all by himself, and then with the Horsemen as well. But Tully Blanchard, funny thing for myself, I have a profile on LinkedIn.com, which, by the way, I recommend to everyone who's looking to have a professional presentation and find cool jobs. But on my LinkedIn profile, I saw Tully Blanchard with a suggested ad at one point. I thought, what the heck, I'll give him a try. I clicked on add as a friend. I put down, you have to categorize what the person is when you try to add him as a buddy on LinkedIn. And I put down he was a friend. And when he accepted, which was nice enough. I suppose a lot of people click in there and just accept anybody who asks for their friendship. But he shot one of those generic response messages when it was like my birthday or anniversary of a job or something like that. And I took that opportunity to shoot a private message to him back and tell him what it meant to me to always see Tully Blanchard wrestle, how this shorter than short guy in a big man's world was just so polished, so refined, and how excited that always made me, because I am not the tallest guy in the world. Still I'm not. I'm 5'10" on a good day, and just to see a guy like Tully Blanchard, who's shorter than most people, go out there, be a world tag team champion, he's television champion, United States champion, never held the world title, but I didn't care. I thought he was the cool bad guy, and I wanted to be him, and he ended up shooting me a very personal response that meant the world to me. So Tully, if by some stroke of luck you happen to hear this podcast, which I highly doubt because I don't get very much syndication here yet, but if you are, thank you so much for the personal shout out. I really appreciated it, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing nowadays for those troubled people out there in prisons around the country that you go and speak to. So I'll get off my personal stuff and get back to the WWE news. I want to address an NXT talent actually next, which is Patrick Clark. I watched the season of Tough Enough that Patrick Clark was on. I thought he was one of the most arrogant, cocky kids I've ever seen, and that's frustrating enough. But now to see him go off on Twitter, give an attitude to the fans who kidnap shows or whatever, absolutely ridiculous. You know what? We're living in 2017. People are going to find out who won which matches ahead of time. Heck, I've already announced some tonight that aren't going to air for a couple weeks on TNA programming, and that's just the way it is. So when they know what's coming, or if they want to influence the product and they know that it's being taped ahead or whatever, and they want to take control of the show, guess what, dude? They paid the money to be there. They have the right to take control of whatever the hell they want. If you don't like that, tough. Get out of the business. If you can't handle some criticism from the fans. First off, you have very limited talent to begin with. Second off, you got a big motor mouth. If you ever want to be anything in this industry, you better learn something. Those crazy lunatic fans that you're complaining about in your Twitter feed, they're the ones who are going to be paying your paycheck. Okay? If you don't connect with them, you don't get a promotion to the main roster. You can sit there and toil in NXT till they cut you, and then try to make things work on the independent scene. You and your MCW programs you used to run. Wonderful. I hope you enjoy those, but I would think the way you spoke on Tough Enough, you actually want to go somewhere someday. And in the meantime, all you're doing is complaining about fans who are marking out for themselves. Let them. If that's what gets you to the main roster, let them. But in the meantime, don't be bashing the fans. We have the right to say whatever we want to say. We're the ones who pay the money to pay for the tickets to get into the arena to see some 2-bit bum like you wrestle in the first place. So shut up. Moving on. I had to get my Patrick Clark bit in there. Chris Hero has returned to WWE, bringing back his Cassius Ohno character. Never liked any of the names that WWE comes up with. I really wish they'd just let people stick with their own birth name, but whatever. Chris Hero coming out and putting his hand on Nakamura's belt and teasing that he might be coming for that. I ain't gonna lie to you, I was actually looking forward to Bobby Roode working a great program with Shinsuke Nakamura after the big TNA, the NXT show in December, but now it looks like they may be fast-pacing this Cassius Ohno feud. I really hope not. Bobby Roode is a main roster talent. I would love to see him called up during the Royal Rumble, and then I don't have to worry about it. Put him on the main roster, I'll be fine. But otherwise, I'm really frustrated they're going to pass over the Bobby Roode Nakamura feud that they could have drawn out over several months, and it looks like they may be fast-tracking this Cassius Ohno thing. Don't get me wrong, love Chris Hero, one of the greatest talents in the history of professional wrestling, but after a month of waiting to see this Bobby Roode and Shinsuke Nakamura match, I really could wait on Cassius Ohno. Chris Jericho is also in news this week. The rumor is Chris Jericho is going to be leaving again, and then people are acting like that's a big deal. Dude, he was supposed to leave a year ago almost. All right, he was supposed to come in, work through WrestleMania 32, and take off. He stuck around because he's doing one of the best programs he's ever done in the history of his career. Okay, the guy is magic on the mic. Always has been, always will be. WWE did a smart thing, giving him a month-to-month contract so they can keep him there as long as he was willing to stay. But don't forget, this is a guy who's been smart with his money. He has other projects to do, other things he works on. You know about his band Fozzy. He has another album coming out with them. Give the guy a break. Let him go off right into the sunset, and he'll be back again. You know he's not done. After the run he's had this past year, there's no way this is how he finishes up. But it looks like Jericho will be heading out soon. When Jericho's leaving, looks like the Hardys are at the top of the list of people that they want to bring back in, and we've known that for a long time. These broken characters are phenomenal. My only concern is I just can't see Vince giving them the kind of creative freedom that they want to have with these characters. So that being said, you have to wonder, are the Hardys actually going to make it back, or is this one of those things where by the time their contracts come up for renewal, will they have played enough cards in the TNA hierarchy to get a new contract there and maintain all that creative control they already have? So we'll have to wait and see. For me, one of the biggest news tidbits of the week has been the Wrestle Kingdom 11 outcome from the main event. The Wrestling Observer gave it the precious 6-star match quality, but Kenny Omega, that guy boggles my mind. 2 years ago, I knew who he was, but I didn't really care. I know that probably sounds terrible, but I really didn't care. A year ago, taking over the Bullet Club started to make me really get into him. Started watching some of his other matches, things I hadn't seen, pulling up on YouTube or wherever, and then going into that match at Wrestle Kingdom 11 and just tearing the house down. Then he comes out on Twitter and he throws out this big rant about not wanting to be a cog in the WWE engine or any of this stuff, and then literally days later, I'm leaving Japan to go consider my options, or whatever he's saying. The guy's leaving Japan, and really, let's face it, if WWE walks into your negotiations and says, here, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, and it's a substantial amount of money, you're an idiot if you don't take it. If you really are one of the best in the world, which Kenny Omega seems to think he is, and I would actually be inclined to agree with right now coming out of Wrestle Kingdom 11, he should go ahead and consider taking something with WWE. The other factor is Ring of Honor and TNA, the way they've been looking at signing their own talents or scooping up new talents. There could be an opportunity there for him to come into a TNA now that Anthem has purchased them, or he could go to WWE. Now, the interesting note that everybody's been talking about the last day or so is John Cena posting a picture on his feed of Kenny Omega, teasing that he may be coming to the Royal Rumble. And I thought for a moment maybe that's just him screwing with people, because last year he did the same thing with AJ Styles, and then AJ Styles showed up. However, more interesting to me is today that Ty Dillinger made comments about Kenny Omega and Wrestle Kingdom 11, which tells me that there may be a little more than smoke there. It may actually be a fire. Maybe we'll get lucky and see 2 years in a row where WWE steals the premier talent from New Japan and brings him in after Wrestle Kingdom and brings him to the Royal Rumble. However, I did see that I believe his contract with New Japan is not up until January 31st, which would kill off the Royal Rumble rumor. However, doesn't mean that a signing's not far behind. That's all the time we have for this episode, but check back with us in episode 4, where we'll keep covering all the things that happen in the world of wrestling, keep you posted on all behind the scenes jibber jabber and whatnot. Special thanks go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all of our music and sound effects used throughout today's show. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to a family game night is easy with Sketchy People. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games and bring some fun and excitement back to family game night. Go to thegamecrafter.com/sketchypeople to pick up your copy today. The U.S. News and World Report Best Colleges 2017 available at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble right now. To AlleyRepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade needs. And to A&B Education of Lansdale, Pennsylvania, bringing intercultural education to talented students from around the world. We want to thank you for listening to today's podcast, and we encourage you to go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com to learn more about what Mr. Fro can do for you. Remember, Fro-Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro-Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro, and I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today, and we look forward to discussing more of the current events and rumors on our next show. So long, everybody.